This week, drivers are still as crazy as ever, which means the red light running, distracted driving, Honda bumping, and road raging continues unabated. Buckle up and get ready for 20 more exclusive dashcam videos. Tiago was driving in California and was proceeding through an intersection on a green light when another driver ran the light in front of him and he couldn't avoid T-boning them. Tiago told us he was on his way back from a mechanic after getting new tires and brake pads when this happened. When police responded, the other driver told them he'd been turning right, so they didn't give him a citation. Tiago's dashcam footage clearly shows that the other driver had been running a red light to make a left turn. By the way, you may recognize Tiago's name. He sent in the lead video we used in episode 134 too. In that footage, he recorded a pickup running a red light before T-boning a Mercedes making a left turn. This time, he T-boned a Mercedes, but the Mercedes driver was the one running a red light. We'll put a link to that episode at the end of this one, just in case you haven't seen it. Tiago told us his son Arthur, a big fan of our channels, made sure his dad sent us the dashcam footage from this incident. Thanks, Arthur. After waiting patiently for his light to turn green, Ant was preparing to make a left turn when he watched a semi-truck next to him rear-end an SUV just ahead of it. It seems like the trucker had assumed traffic ahead of him had started moving, only noticing the SUV driver wasn't paying attention after colliding with the stationary vehicle. Of course, the trucker then quickly hit the brakes. Just imagine sitting patiently at a traffic light, wrapping up your lengthy text message when, wham, a semi-truck slams into you from behind. How rude! Thankfully, like the vast majority of our submitters, Ant stopped and offered copies of his dashcam footage to the involved drivers before continuing. Nate was getting ready to make a left-hand exit off a New York highway when the driver behind him became triggered and decided to teach Nate a lesson for, actually, we have no idea. Nate thinks the GMC Envoy driver thought he was brake checking him in the passing lane when he was actually letting off the gas pedal in preparation to make the left-hand exit. Whatever the reason, the SUV driver cut in front of Nate before slamming on the brakes. After Nate came nearly to a stop from 60 miles per hour, the GMC driver stayed ahead of him on the highway while Nate took the exit. The SUV driver also threw a bottle at Nate's Honda Odyssey, which struck the side where his kids were sitting, evidently never realizing that Nate had merely intended to exit and had not been targeting him at all. Nate told us he emailed his dashcam footage to the local police, and they sent him to the state police, and they sent him back to the local police, and I'm sure you can tell by now that absolutely nothing ended up happening. This submitter was driving down a California highway when a Jeep in the lane next to him plowed full speed into an SUV. The impact shoved the SUV into another one, making this a 3-vehicle collision. Our submitter told us he thinks the Jeep driver wasn't paying attention, and that definitely seems likely. This submitter is a bicycle courier who, we have to say, has a super cool camera setup. Along with a 360 camera on her handlebars, she also wears a body cam. The view from the 360 camera is the best, so we'll stick with that. She was headed home after the end of her shift when she was waiting at a traffic light next to an unmarked law enforcement SUV. 4 seconds after the oncoming light turned red, a white van ran the light to turn left. The Boulder police officer lit up the party lights and pulled the van over for some instant justice before our submitter pedaled away. We love these cycle cam submissions, so please keep sending them in. This submitter was headed home after dropping his little sister off at work when an oncoming driver recklessly turned in front of him. Our submitter had to slam on the brakes and swerve into the oncoming lane to avoid T-boning the hapless Honda. He did, however, give the other driver credit for using her turn signal. He also pointed out that he would have definitely collided with the car if he had only slammed on the brakes and hadn't also turned the steering wheel. Like this video if you like his driving skills. This submitter was riding his motorcycle when he watched two drivers change lanes at the same time before colliding with each other. Our submitter did the right thing and stopped to share his footage with both drivers. Thankfully, nobody was injured and everyone was polite. Our submitter said he strongly recommends that every motorist get a camera, as they can really save you from a lot of headaches. Be sure to grab your dashcam discount in the description. Angel watched a driver realize their light had turned red after they were already in the intersection. After legally entering the intersection on a yellow light, the driver slammed on the brakes when the light turned red, blocking traffic from the right and also stopping another car behind it from proceeding. You've heard of too fast, too furious? Well, this driver was too late to stop. If you ever find yourself in the middle of an intersection when the light turns red, you should carefully continue instead of slamming on the brakes. Of course, if you start to pull into an intersection while the light is still red, you might want to check your rearview mirror before you back up. This Civic driver slowly backed into a completely stationary pickup truck, so this definitely counts as a Honda bump. Our submitter told us the pickup driver even honked, but the warning was ignored. Our submitter told us he's been watching Wham Bam Tesla Cam videos for a while. This was the first collision he caught with the dashcam in his Hyundai Ioniq, and he's amazed it was a Honda bump. David was on his way home when a utility truck pulled across the road in front of him and stopped, forcing him to slam on the brakes to avoid T-boning it. David's dashcam captured the sound of his tires screeching as he decelerated before honking at the oblivious pickup driver. Thankfully, he was able to use the other lane to get around the truck and continue. Joey was on his way home from work when another driver merged into his lane to go around a school bus, failing to yield to Joey's Honda Civic. Even though Joey slammed on the brakes and honked, he had no way to avoid sliding on the wet road and rear-ending the Toyota. After the collision, both drivers turned onto a side street to exchange information. Thankfully, nobody was injured, so first responders weren't contacted. After Joey sent his dashcam footage to his insurance provider, they immediately found the other driver responsible. Joey told us he loves watching both Wham Bam Dashcam and Wham Bam Tesla Cam. If you do too, be sure to subscribe, and we'll put a link to the latest Tesla Cam episode at the end of this video. Speaking of Teslas, Kane spotted a Tesla behaving badly when the driver of a white Model Y sped up to run a red light and they didn't even turn into the correct lane. That Tesla man can't drive. That Tesla man can't drive. Some viewers think we have this segment because we don't like Teslas, but that's not true at all. Most of the members of the Wham Bam team drive Teslas ourselves. We just don't like when other Tesla drivers make us look bad. This submitter was waiting to turn left through an intersection when an oncoming SUV driver turned in front of a car, and I bet you can guess what happened next. Our submitter did the right thing and pulled into a nearby parking lot before checking on the involved drivers and offering them his dashcam footage. Police arrived 3 minutes later. He also told us he finds our jingles to be very cringy. Perfect! That was the exact reaction we were going for. Paul encountered a lane splitter while driving in Utah, but he wasn't riding a motorcycle. Paul told us that while it appears in his footage like the BMW hit his Mercedes, that was actually just Paul jerking the steering wheel to avoid a collision. Sadly, he wasn't able to get the BMW's license plate number as it sped off. Okay, now go be the first viewer to comment about how the BMW driver wasn't using turn signals. Luna was taking her daughter to breakfast when a rideshare driver cut across 3 lanes before sideswiping her F-150. Luna told us the rideshare driver wanted to continue her trip, but Luna was able to convince her to pull over. She then complained that the police were taking a long time to respond. When the cops did arrive, Luna showed them her dashcam footage and they instantly found the other driver responsible. Luna told us that after 2 years of ownership, her dashcam paid for itself. Rick was running errands on his birthday when he heard a loud bang before his Jeep Wrangler filled with smoke. It turned out that his Jeep's transfer case had basically exploded. Thankfully, he was able to pull over, and another motorist also stopped to make sure he was okay. He was, but then she noticed that his Jeep was on fire. He was able to put the fire out with an extinguisher he carries in his Jeep, which is a really good idea that everyone should follow. Fixing it was going to cost about $8,000 US, so he replaced it with a Wrangler 4xe plug-in hybrid. Bryson was on his way home from a metal concert when he noticed the driver ahead of him swerve around before hitting the brakes. That other car had run over something that had fallen off the semi-truck in the exit lane, and Bryson was the next one to run it over. Bryson continued to the next exit as warning lights appeared on his dashboard. His wheel also pulled hard to the right. When he pulled into a gas station to check for damage, he found a semi-truck that had also been damaged by whatever had been in the highway. Actually, a bunch of different vehicles had been damaged. A state trooper told Bryson that the first car to hit the debris was totaled. Bryson's Dodge Durango needed $7,000 US in repairs, all covered by the trucker's insurance. Jeanette was on her way to visit a relative when she witnessed a close call between another driver and a jaywalker. Jeanette told us the Prius driver whipped around her when she hit the brakes for the illegally crossing pedestrian. All she could do afterward was let out a sigh of relief. Brian's wife was driving with their son along for the ride when they watched 2 drivers collide as they both tried to beat their yellow lights.
Oh, oh!
Brian's wife called 911 right away to report the collision, and she said the drivers were out and walking around as she left. Brian also said his son asked him to send this footage to Wham Bam, but he asked us to bleep out his mom's bad words. We won't tell him that we already always bleep bad words. After all, this is a family-friendly channel. Pete thinks the cart demon has gotten bored and decided to upgrade to Gurneys. He watched an empty Gurney get pushed across 2 lanes of active traffic before being stopped by a curb. Don't forget to watch Tiago's other submission if you haven't seen it yet. If you aren't a Wham Bam Tesla Cam subscriber yet, go watch the latest episode here and help us hit 1 million subscribers. Subscribe to this channel before you go, and we'll see you next week.
Wham Bam, we got a Patreon, man. Please support the show.